Okay, so we are recording. Welcome to Outright TV, a video and podcast series bringing you stories of LGBTI people and allies across the globe. I'm Grace Poore from Outright Action International. I'm the Asia Regional Coordinator. And for today's episode, I'm talking with Aung and Aint in Myanmar. Hi, Myomin and Aint. Welcome to Outright TV. And thank you both for taking the time to talk with me for this episode. So let's start with an introduction. Myomin, do you want to do a short introduction of who you are?
Thank you, Grace, and thank you, everyone. My name is Aung. I'm the Executive Director of Equality Myanmar. Equality Myanmar is known as the human rights organization working both on the human rights education and advocacy for the legal reforms and structural reform in the country. Nice to meet you all.
Great. Thank you, Myomin. Aint, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, okay. Hello everyone, I am Dr. Aint from Mandalay. I'm the co-founder of the Brilliance Bisexual organization, and our organization is especially done for the LGBT right. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. So I'll go right into it. So you had your elections. Myanmar had its elections recently. Tell us a little bit about the elections. What were the results? Are you happy with the results? And what do they mean for LGBTI rights?
Well, the election result was surprisingly for me and not surprising for many of others, because the ruling party, National League for Democracy, led by Aung San Suu Kyi, won another landslide victory. They won the majority of both houses and even the majority of the seats in the state and regional parliament. So this is another major success and a big victory for the NLD. That showed that, most of the people in the country don't want to return the military dictatorship, and they want to support NLD because they still has a hope for democratization in the country. So that finally the victory and the winner is NLD. And it's not the result, but also in the election campaign, the LGBT is very significant. This election is very, very special for NLD and also the LGBT, because some of the political parties, including the NLD, for the first time mentioned the LGBT and SOGI issue in their election declarations under different topics. So LGBTs are mentioned under the non-discrimination clause that the three main organized political parties mentioned for the first time, and some parties mentioned LGBT under the women issues. So they recognized, lesbian women, transgender women under the name of the women's issues, and there should be no discrimination. And some political parties mentioned LGBT under the youth issue. They said that all youth should be regarded for equality, including LGBT. This is very significant because LGBT issue never be on the political party statements. So for the first time, and unfortunately, NLD mentioned the LGBT and they won in the election majority. So this is the good excitement for the LGBT and also big dream for new government, because the NLD will have a new government and also pick up the issue which they promised before the election. So we hope that the people elected from the NLD will support the causes of LGBT and doing some kind of reforms of the legal reforms, particularly some of the penal code that's threatening the daily life of the LGBT in the next 5 years. But
So,
sometimes what happened is, sometimes what happened, they promise before the election, but sometimes they forget when they are in the government. So this is the duty and responsibility of our movement to keep pushing and making the way into the parliament, making the table, the LGBT issues on the table, and making a proper change for the side, for the life of the LGBT people.
so just for our audience, so NLD is the National League of Democracy.
National League for Democracy,
National
yes.
League for Democracy, and they won the majority in both houses of parliament.
Yes.
And there are a significant number of LGBT friends and allies in parliament now. And LGBT issues were mentioned under the youth policy, and they were mentioned under women's rights. And what was the third?
And also non-discrimination
and
issues.
non-discrimination, right? Okay, so there are three areas in which LGBTI rights were mentioned.
Yes.
So, Hmue, you are from Mandalay, and I have read that there is a gay politician who ran for office from Mandalay, and that's where you are from. Can you talk a little bit about the LGBTI rights that you were documenting? Because there was a study that you did, and did this politician help you all in any way? Did you talk to him in any way? Do you want to answer that question, or maybe Myo Min, you want to answer the question about the politician?
Well, the candidate, one of the candidates was an open gay man from Mandalay.
Okay.
But he ran he was nominated by another political parties, but he announced himself as a candidate after our research. So he was not well known doing that research. So I think our documenters did not conduct any interviews or anything towards him, together with him. So this is my assumption. Hey,
Right.
have you met the guy, the open LGBT candidate from Mandalay? Why you are conducting the interviews and research data information? Have you met with them? Have you met with him?
Connection trong thuyền này thì chọn cái nào thuyền.
Connection is not good for her.
Okay, connection is not good for you. Okay. Do you want?
Can you hear me?
How is it now? Is it better now?
Hello. This is Myanmar.
Oh.
We
Yes,
always have technical problems and connection problems.
Signal problems in Myanmar. Yes. Hmue, can you hear us now? You
Yes.
can. Okay, so let's just go straight to the study. Now, I had read a couple of weeks ago this study that was done in Myanmar. It's the first time that such a study has been done, and it documented family violence and domestic violence against LGBT people. And you were one of the people who participated in that study. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like to do the study and to talk to people? And the study was done in Mandalay and Yangon, 2 cities, right? So share a little bit about what it was like to do the study and what you found.
Yes. I'm going to study the case and listen their experience. Sometimes I felt so horrible because of the case. One of my cases, it was violence by her father because she was a bisexual woman and she came out to her father that I'm a bisexual woman and he just forced to her to drink the many drugs to die. So it was very horrible, and I feel so sad for her. Oh, that's a really parents do family violence in their family. Oh, why did you report? So she says he is my father. So why can't I? Why can't I? What? That is a forced suicide. Why you don't report him? No, no, it's okay. Here's my father. Oh, that is so amazing. I can't say anymore. But another case from the Shuebu city, the mother so upset to her daughter because he was a transplant, and when he was paralyzed, he don't accept his daughter. And ဆရာပြောပြမှဖြစ်မယ်ထင်တယ်အဲ့ဒါကြောင့်
Okay.
ဟိုကို
I will
ထုံးတဲ့ case
translate.
လေးရွှေဘုံမှာသူ့အမေက yes နောက်ဆုံးသူ့အမေကလေဟိုသူအောက်ပိုင်းသေးသွားတဲ့အချိန်မှာသူသမီးကိုလက်မခံမိနဲ့အိမ်ရှိကနေဖြတ်သွားတယ်လို့ခဲနဲ့ထူရချီလို့လေအဲ့ကိစ္စကအရန်ကို surprise ဖြစ်ပြီးတော့လေအရန်ကိုလေ
သူ့မိဘ
အရန်လက်သွားခဲ့မိဘတယောက်ကသားသမီးတယောက်ကိုအဲ့လိုလားဟုတ်တယ်ဟိုလေးမေကတော့ဟိုပါလေအောက်ပိုင်းသေးသွားပြီးတော့အဲ့လိုမျိုးနောက်ဆုံးသေးသွားအထိတောင်မှသူ့သားကိုသူ့သမီးကိုလက်မခံသွားဘူးပေါ့နော် transplant ဖြစ်နေအဲ့ case ကဆိုရင်အရန်ကိုခံစားရတယ်မိဘတယောက်ကကိုမွေးထားတဲ့သားသမီးကိုပေါ့နော်ဒီလိုမျိုးလုံးရက်လေခြင်းဆိုတဲ့ခံစားချက်လည်းခံစားရတယ်ကိုထိုးလင်းကလည်းနောက်ဆုံးချိန်ထိသူ့အမေပေါ့နော်သူ့အမေလက်ခံလာမျိုးစူးစမ်းခဲ့ရတာနောက်ဆုံးသူ့အမေတာတေးတော့သူလက်မခံဘူးပေါ့နော်ဒီ interview ကိုမေးတဲ့အချိန်မှာမှသူကလုံးဝနေမစဲနိုင်ခဲ့ဘူးသူလုံးဝမခံစားနိုင်ဘူးပေါ့နော်အဲ့ဒါကိုတွေ့ရတယ်ဆရာ
She interviewed one of the trans men that transplant was very exposed to the family, so he did not get any support from the family, particularly from his mother. So he stayed separately from the family, but she always has a hope that the family will accept him back, even though he is trans man. But the family never welcomed him back or accept him. Her mother got paralyzed, but mother was very strong. So every time her mother saw him, it's yelled at her, and also use a lot of violence wording to him until she died. So that when she interviewed the trans man, she was in tears. She was crying how she felt about the way the family treated her, and also she was very stressed because this is a life. Because of sexual orientation and gender identity, the family hate the trans men until they pass away.
Okay, that's a very moving story. And the earlier story that you gave the example, Aint was about a bisexual woman whose brother was very violent. And I think what you said was that she tried to commit suicide by taking pills, and that the brother was very violent, and that you asked her whether she reported the violence. And this bisexual woman said that she did not, she wouldn't, because it's her brother. She's not going to report her brother. So these are two examples of very moving, powerful stories. How many interviews did you all conduct? And how will you use the findings from the study? You can speak in Burmese and then Mio can translate.
I can translate, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I studied for 22 cases. ဆရာကျွန်တော် case 22ခုလုပ်ခဲ့ရဆရာ22ခုပါဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ပေါ့နော်ဒီလိုအရန်ကိုထူးခြားတဲ့ case ကဆောနာဆရာကိုပြောခဲ့တဲ့ case နှစ်ခုပေါ့နော်နောက်တစ်ခုကဘာလဲဆိုတော့လေဆရာအဲ့မှာနောက်တစ်ခုတွေ့ရတာအဲ့လိုအိမ်တွင်းအကျန်းအဲ့ဒါတွေကိုဘယ်လိုကနေကျွန်တော်ဘယ်လိုရှာလဲဆိုတော့နီးစက်ရပေါ့နော်တယောက်ကိုမေးတယ်အဲ့တယောက်ကနေမှနောက်သူတို့အချင်းချင်းကတော့သိတယ်လေဆရာလက်တော့ပြီးပြောပြကြတယ်ဘယ်သူတော့မေးလိုက်ရင်အဆင်ပြေဆိုတာပေါ့နော်အဲ့ဒီမှာကျွန်တော်တို့တွေ့ခဲ့ရတဲ့အခက်အခဲကဘာလဲဆိုလို့ရှိရင်သူတို့က record တွင်တာလုံးဝလက်မခံဘူးလုံးဝ record မတွင်နဲ့ပဲ record တွင်တာကိုလက်မခံဘူးဓာတ်ပုံရိုက်တာကိုလက်မခံဘူးဒီအောင်အသုံးပြုပါတယ်ဆိုတဲ့အကြောင်းကိုတော့လက်မှတ်ကိုအသာတကြီးထိုးပေးတယ်အဲ့ဒါရှိတယ် နောက်တစ်ခုကကြတော့ဘာဖြစ်လဲဆိုတော့ပေါ့နော်အရန်ထူးဆန်းတာတစ်ခုတွေးခဲ့ရတာကအဲ့ဂျဲမာမှာပေါ့နော်အဲ့ဆောတာဆိုလို့ရှိရင် suicide လုပ်ဖို့ရအတွက်တွန်းအားပေးခံရတဲ့ကလေးတွေနောက်တစ် case တစ်ခုပေါ့နော်သူကကြတော့ဘယ်လိုလဲဆိုတော့သူက transplant ဖြစ်နေလို့သူကမိန်းမယူထားလို့ဆိုပြီးအိမ်ကနေနှင်ထားခံရတဲ့တယောက်ရဲ့ case ပေါ့နော်သူဆိုလို့ရှိရင်အဲ့နှစ်ယောက်မှာထူးခြားတာဘာတွေ့အောင်ဆိုတော့သူတို့ကငယ်ကနေမိသားစုတွေမှာအကြမ်းဖက်ခံခဲ့တော့သူတို့ကိုယ်တိုင်ပြန်ပြီးအကြမ်းဖက်တဲ့လူတွေဖြစ်လာတာသူတို့အိမ်မှာအကြမ်းဖက်ခံရပြီးသူတို့လက်တွဲပေါ်မှာကြတော့ပေါ့နော်သူတို့ကပြန်ပြီးတော့အကြမ်းဖက်တဲ့လူတွေဖြစ်နေတာအဲ့လိုမျိုး case တွေတွေ့ခဲ့ရတယ်ထူးထူးဆန်းဆန်းပါ
Okay, so she conducted 22 interviews. And one interesting is, even though they gave a consent to use a case, they don't allow the people to take photos or record. So only the information is allowed to you for public and for the research, but no permission to use photos and the photos and the name.
So,
so this is the one thing.
How many interviews? 62, 70?
22.
Oh, she conducted 22.
She conducted 22.
How many in the full?
Yeah, out of 63 interviews. She conducted, because in Mandalay, and they also have a assignment.
I see.
There's so many, common stories. One of the significant stories she mentions the 2 cases. Another one, and also interesting one, is a couple of lesbian women. And they also face that kind of, get out from the house or get out from the family, and they live together. And what the interesting issue that she found is their family has the experience of domestic violence. Like the parents and the people who have violence to them also have a violence when they were in child. So that's very interesting. Violent issue is not only one case, but it's going to generation, and also it's a cycle of violence. So this is the interesting she found from one of the cases.
So basically there were 64 interviews altogether in the entire study. Hmue conducted 22 of the interviews. That's a lot of interviews and a lot of painful stories. And I really like the point that you made also, that this is not just individual incidents of violence, but that this is intergenerational, as you said, and that this lesbian couple, for example, that you just talked about, they had grown up experiencing violence in the home as well, and then they experienced further violence as a lesbian couple. So talk a little bit about this law that you all have been trying in Myanmar to pass, I think, for 7 years now. It's called the Prevention of Violence Against Women Law. And will this study be useful? Will it help your advocacy? And what is it that you're trying to achieve? I think you want to make sure that this law protects LGBT people. How do you want the law to protect LGBT people? How will you use this study for your advocacy?
To me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the law is a long history of drafting, like 7 years in drafting process. But it is also important because Myanmar ratified Convention Against the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, for quite a long time. But there's no national law particularly protecting for women. So this is the first effort at the national level to have the special law for protection women from violence against women. So this is the thing. So the first idea, having a special women protection law, which particularly protect women. So we welcome that one. But since it started drafting, there's so many challenges from the gender perspectives, from the culture perspective, from the legal making process. So it's been so many correction, amendments, so many debate, long history of debates for the issue of cultural violence, economic violence, domestic violence, and marital rape. Because, these kind of issues are sometimes is accepted by the Burmese society, under the name of culture and tradition. So many people don't want to touch it because it's too much so sensitive. And then some people say it's only the domestic, it's not the public. So how can we prevent the law to prevent that violence under the family's environment? So there's a lot of debate, but finally, it's drafted, but it's not passed it yet. So we thought it would be adopted in last government, but it did not happen. So the law, the drafting process and the legislation process is until next government. So we have to push, because we think this is essential and necessary. But the law itself does not cover lesbian women and lesbian woman is covered because it's woman at birth, but transgender woman. Because under the first chapter, under the definition clause, the woman mean woman at birth only. Woman who was born as a woman. So it is according to the penal code and according to the old British, citation. But the lawmaker used the same definition. What they miss is the transgender woman who was not woman at birth, but transformed or transgender as a woman. So even if the law, the current law passed, it will not cover transgender women because of the definition. But interestingly, what we found, transgender women suffering domestic violence like other women, because they dress up like a woman, people and family treat them as a woman because they change and cross-dress or transgender way. So it is because of the woman issue. So I think what our argument is, even though they are not born as women, they are treated as a woman and facing the common violence like other counterpart women. So we have been advocating to include the transgender woman under the definition of woman definition in the law.
So you're trying to change the definition of women so that it's not a binary definition.
Yes.
And change the way it is defined in the penal code. Are you also advocating for this law to protect couples in same-sex relationships when they experience violence?
But the law is just for the woman. So to transgender women and a lesbian woman, they are covered under that. But it's not the same-sex marriage between men because this is only for the woman particularly.
I see. Okay. So what you are, I get it. So what you're trying to advocate actually or working for is for that the law changes, the draft will have language that uses a more inclusive definition of women, that
That's
it
right.
protects all women, but that you're not trying to get the law to protect same-sex partnerships.
Marriage. No.
So
the law does not cover it.
Right. So it won't protect gay men, but what about two lesbians in a same-sex relationship? Will it protect them?
Yeah, if we put lesbian woman or transgender woman under the definition, it automatically cover under this law.
I see. Okay. So I guess, what kind of protections are you all looking for? So say, for instance, this law, they accept the Attorney General, Parliament, whoever your target advocacy targets are, say that they accept this inclusive definition of women, and they accept that lesbians, trans women, women across the board are protected under this law. So what happens if there's violence? Will they be arrested? Will they go to jail? Will they be criminalized?
If the victims or survival of the domestic violence or family violence reported the case, the police must take their case and open a legal files. And then there would be a kind of investigation. And if it is evidence founded, though someone committed, it would be dealt with according to the law. It could be a penalty, imprisonment, or fines.
Well,
So it depends on the degrees of violence,
yeah.
and then so the willing of the people who reported the case.
So
but
I
like
guess
you mentioned, you know, there are many in our research, many people who are the witness or victims of the domestic violence, they don't want to report the case to the police because, you know, we have a strong family value in Myanmar. Like, you know, if someone make a violence against you, it's your own family members, or particularly, you know, father and mother, they don't want to do it. And then they got a lot of social pressure from the community. This is the man who put his own father into the jail. This is really, you know, social casting issue in the society. So people don't want to report it. So we should find another way of that. But if there's a law, what we can do is police can record it, and the victims can be handled by the police to the safer place, refer the case to the safe house, and take a kind of medical and other social services, because any victims are entitled to get that kind of psychosocial or medical support, or, you know, any other safety and shelter. So this is automatically, you know, take the person from the dangerous home to the safer place. So that's so far it is good, but like taking a legal action, it also depends on the police and the people who want to take what kind of action they want to do.
Right. Hmue, can you share some of your thoughts, especially because you have talked to so many people. So even if this law passes, I mean, the police are not friends, right? I mean, in Myanmar, in fact, the police are among those who arrest and who intimidate and who harass and do all kinds of things with LGBTI people. So they are not necessarily friends of LGBT people. So say if this law passes, this Prevention of Violence Against Women law, and Myo Min said, it may not mean that it goes to court. It may not mean that the violent parents or the violent brother or the violent partner gets arrested. But having a police record means, at least from what Mio said, that they can go to shelter, they can get counseling, they can be referred for services if there is a complaint of violence. But what you said was, Hmue, in that example you gave of the individual who was abused by her brother, she did not even want to report it. So I'm sure many people don't want to report their parents, their brothers, their partners. So how will this law benefit LGBT people? Should there be such a law only, or are there other ways to protect LGBT people from this kind of violence?
အဲ့ဒီဥစ္စာလေးကျွန်တော်ကတော့တိတ်ပြီးတော့ဒီဥပဒေပြဋ္ဌာန်းလိုက်တယ်တိတ်ပြီးတော့ effective ဖြစ်လာမယ်လို့တိတ်မထင်ဘူး။ဘာလို့ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ဒီတော်တော်များများပေါ့နော်မြန်မာနိုင်ငံမှာဘယ်လိုဆိုလို့ရှိရင် family violence ပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ် domestic violence ပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ်ရဲကိုပဲဖြစ်စေကိုယ်နဲ့နီးစပ်ရာအုပ်ချုပ်ရေးမှုဘာညာကိုပဲဖြစ်စေတွားတိုင်ခဲ့တယ်ဆိုရင်တော့တော်တော်များများလက်ဆောင်များတယ်လေဆရာဟိုဘယ်လိုပြောမလဲဒါကသူတို့မိသားစုချင်းပဲဖြစ်တဲ့ကိစ္စဒါချိန်တန်ပြေလို့တော့မှမိသားစုတွေကိစ္စကိုအပြင်ကိုအတွင်းမိအပူထုတ်တယ်ဆိုတဲ့စကားအောင်ရှိသေးတယ်လေအဲ့လိုမျိုးတွေပြောကြတယ်နောက်ရဲတွေကလည်းဒါလည်းလို့လင်မယားဖြစ်တဲ့ကိစ္စချိန်တန်ပြန်ပြေလို့တော့မှာပေါ့နော်အဲ့လိုမျိုးတွေပြောကြတယ်နောက်ပြီးတော့ခါကျတော်တော်များများကလေဆရာအဲ့ကျွန်တော်ကောက်ခဲ့တဲ့ case တဲမှာလည်းတစ်ခုပါပါတယ်ဟိုအုပ်ချုပ်ရေးမှုကိုတိုင်နေချိန်မှာအုပ်ချုပ်ရေးမှုကလုံးဝလက်ဆောင်လိုက်တာလေဒီလိုကိစ္စနေလို့ရှင်မိန်းမဟာမိန်းမပဲမိန်းမချင်းယူကိုစိတ်ကူးလဲဆိုအဲ့မှာဟိုဥပမာတစ်ခုကပါပြီးသားဆိုတကယ်လို့ဒီဥပဒေဖြစ်လာခဲ့ရင်လည်းဥပဒေကဖြစ်လာတာတက်လောက်ပဲဖြစ်မယ်ဆရာဟိုဘာဖအေးကနေတမျိုးပြန်ပြီး rape လုပ်တဲ့ case မျိုးတို့အဲ့လို case အဲ့လိုမျိုးမှာပဲ တိတိတသာထိရောက်မှုရှိပြီးတော့ဒီပုံမှန်အပကြီးကရိုက်တာနှက်တာဆဲတာဆိုတာအိမ်ကနှင်ချတာနောက်ကတော့ဒီ law မှာလာပြီးတော့အကျိုးတက်ရောက်မယ်လို့ကျွန်တော်တော့မထင်ဘူးဆရာဒါကျွန်တော်အမြင်ပေါ့နော်ဆရာ
Okay, the law would be the law itself if no one report and use it. So not that much meaningful if the people don't tell to use the law or report the cases. And although other factor is we have a traditional belief that domestic issues should not be taken out of the house and report the cases to others. So that kind of social pressure and social norms make difficult to the people even though they want to report the cases. So there's so many obstacles. It's not only the LGBT, many women, in our country has the same problems. So the law is there, but nobody use it. It's used and very unuseful law, no functioning law. So we should fire another way, how we can enforce the law or how to prevent before it's taken. So many people would use if the crime is sexual violence or rape, because it is a very, very big, criminal issues. So people would report it to the police, and anyone who knows will report. But something like, the fighting or domestic violence, they think it's just a normal and everyday cases, and they don't want to report in it. They don't want to use it as a serious crime.
So this is very interesting, and I'm so glad that we talked. Outright, Mio, you were there recently in October. Outright had a regional forum with LGBTI advocates from 8 countries in Asia. And we have just launched this brand new Asia regional network on gender-based violence and SOGI. And you are a member of the network. So hopefully there can be more discussions at this network on how we can protect LGBTI people with the law, whether it's the law against rape or domestic violence or family violence or partner violence, but also find other ways to protect LGBTI people so that we're not only looking at criminal justice, but some other kind of justice. Because at the end of the day, what we want is protection, services, justice for LGBTI people, and find different ways. So I'd like to end this interview. Do you all have any closing statements you want to make, or something that you're working on right now that you want to leave the audience with, a message?
Okay, so now we are doing advocacy or legal advocacy for better domestic violence law, making inclusive protection law for women and other genders. So this is the legal approach. But at the same time, we also have a education approach, like raising awareness of the domestic violence among the LGBT people and also the communities, so we can prevent before it happens and refer to the cases or from the legal procedure. So education comes first, and that could be prevent before it happens. So I think we should go education approach and legal approach at the same time or simultaneously together. Legal approach and strong law without using that is useless. So we should raise the issue of the law is not a punishment, but to protect you from the domestic violence or family violence. At the same time, the people who could be a perpetrator for the violence should aware of this is not, traditional way of committing violence against anyone that you love. So everything, it should be multiple or comprehensive approach if we want to stop or abolish this kind of domestic violence and family violence.
That's excellent. That's great. Thank you. That's a great way of looking at it. Education, promoting nonviolence, sending a message to people who use violence, letting people, the victims and survivors, know that the law is there to protect them. But at the same time, prevention before the violence happens. That's a great message. And Hmue, what about you? Any message? Final words?
ဆောင်းဆရာပြောသွားလို့ပဲပေါ့နော်ဒီကတကယ်ဟိုဒီခံရတဲ့လူတွေကိုကြို့ပြီးရှင်းပြထားတဲ့နေဆိုတော့တကယ်ကိုရမ်းမှန်နေဆရာဘာလို့ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်သူတို့ကလေဟိုမြန်မာရဲ့ society ကဒါမတိုင်တင်ဘူးမဖြစ်တဲ့ကိစ္စဆိုလက်ခံထားကြတာပေါ့အဲ့တော့ဒါကသူတို့အပြစ်ပေးဖို့မဟုတ်ဘူးဒါနေတို့ကာကွယ်ဖို့ပဲဆိုတဲ့ကိစ္စတကယ်ကြီးကိုအရင်လိုအပ်တယ်ဆရာအဲ့ဒါကိုတကယ်ကိုအကြီးကျယ်ထောက်ခံတယ်လက်ခံတယ်နောက်ပြီးတော့ခါကျတော့လေဒီအိမ်ကပေါ့နော်အိမ်မှာ power ရှိတဲ့လူအိမ်ထောင်ဦးကြီးပဲဖြစ်စေအိမ်ကကိုကကြောက်ရတဲ့လူပေါ့နော်ဦးလေးပဲဖြစ်စေဒါမှမဟုတ်လို့ရှိရင်ကိုယ့်ရဲ့အိမ်ထောင်ဖက်ပဲဖြစ်စေပေါ့နော်ကိုယ့်ပတ်ဝန်းကျင်မှာရှိတဲ့လူတွေကလည်းဒီ law ကိုသိထားဖို့လိုအပ်တယ်ဘာလို့ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ငါတို့ဒီလိုလုပ်ရင်ငါတို့သူတို့ကဒီ law နဲ့ကင်ပေါက်လိုက်မယ်ဆိုရဲအတိတ်တစ်ချက်လောက်လေးပဲသူတို့ရစေခြင်းတော့လေသူတို့ကလည်းအဲ့လိုမျိုးသိနေဖို့လိုအပ်တယ်လို့ကျွန်တော်ထင်တယ်ဆရာ
Yeah, she strongly support my point of, awareness and education before it happened. And then legal law is protection, the component for domestic violence. At the same time, the law is that the protection law should be used to remind the perpetrators before it be committed. So wait, there's a law. It could be a problem for you before you did it to me. So that kind of warning and threatening could be useful for the people. And so it should be a reminder.
Yes, so that the law is a reminder to those who want to use violence that there are penalties. Thank you so much, both of you. This was a great interview. And it's I'm sorry we have such a short time to talk about such a big issue, but we definitely will continue talking. There'll be many other opportunities for us to do this. And so thank you so much for talking to me. Thank you so much for talking to Outright TV. And I'm Grace Poore. I'm the Asia Regional Coordinator at Outright Action International. And we've just been talking to Aung and Aint from Myanmar. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.